How well do you know yourself? Now consider, how well does God know you? I'm George Roper with Authentic Faith. Today's verse, we will be looking at 1 Corinthians chapter 13 and verse 12. And it reads, "For now we see only a reflection as in a mirror. Then we shall see face to face. Now I know in part. Then I shall know fully, even as I am fully known." And so, when we look at this scripture, we can understand that our personal understanding, our awareness and comprehension of our own individual, unique selves is limited. And God has a deeper understanding, a broader understanding, and can look within us to see what we are made of, what we are capable of, and see potential that even we cannot see. Remember, when Samuel was sent to the family of Jesse to look for a new king to replace Saul, as Jesse brought out each one of his sons, Samuel would think to himself, well, this is a good-looking young man. This is a good-looking kid. He's strong. He's tall. He has command. Certainly, this is going to be the next king of Israel. And God would be talking to him, telling him, no, that's not the guy. That's not who I'm picking. And each time Samuel would have to ask Jesse, do you have some more kids? Because this is not the one. And unbeknownst to Jesse and his family, Samuel is thinking to himself, this is definitely the guy. He's got the look. But God went on to explain to Samuel, don't judge by aesthetics. Don't judge just on the outside. Don't judge by appearance, because I could see capabilities. I could see personality. I could see talents that you can't on the surface, as you can look at a man's mind and at a man's heart deep within a person. And so when we apply this to ourselves, we do see that God can have a plan for us. God could have a map and a route laid out for us that we don't understand, that we don't comprehend, that we would have never drawn out for ourselves or even thought we were capable. There are abilities that we have yet to develop that God could see we have the potential for. So we don't see that now, but as God works with us, we will come into a fulfillment where we will be displaying that. And even beyond our present day, there comes a time where our development will be such that we will enter the presence of God and see God as He is and reflect that in ourselves, as we will come to emulate God, not just in appearance, but also in personality, in thought, in understanding of who we are and what we are capable of, as we now would reflect who God is Himself. We would become the spitting image of God. And this is our attempt, this is our goal, even now, as we strive to develop ourselves, learn new skills, network, and make improvements in different areas of our life, vocationally, our family, educationally, in terms of finances. These are all concerns that people have that they look to address. And certainly this scripture could apply to that kind of development and improvement. That being said, those things are indeed true and can hold true and can be gleaned from this scripture. However, let's now put it in context. When you look at the rest of the book of Corinthians, you see that the Corinthians had a culture where they put emphasis on behaviors and approaches that were not the most important, and the behaviors and approaches that were of preeminence, that were of most importance, were the ones that they really didn't pay attention to or value. So by the time that we get to chapter 13, we have Paul explaining to the Corinthians that one of the most important abilities to demonstrate, abilities as in gifts from God, one of the most important abilities to demonstrate would be that of demonstrating love. And when I say love, this love is not a feeling. Love is an action. It is a state of mind that then leads to behavior that follows. And so Paul is explaining to the Corinthians that demonstrating love is what is most important. And he goes on to detail how that would appear in real time, how that would look, how that love would demonstrate itself in everyday interaction. And what you had was the Corinthians valuing abilities from God that in time, once God would continue to work with individuals and all of humanity, once God had achieved his purpose, far into the future, when God achieves his purpose of what he's doing with mankind, those abilities won't be of a necessity anymore. They will essentially be discontinued, whether it be the ability to speak many languages, or to perform miracles, or to have prophetic insights and tell the future. All those are tools that God is using now to work with individuals and humanity at large, to have them develop and bring them to the point that they need to be at, where we would be at one with God and be re-engaged with God. And that's God's plan ultimately. And Paul is saying those other qualities and other attributes that the Corinthians were most focused on would one day cease to be quite relevant, and that what they should instead be focusing on is the ability to demonstrate love, which is a prerequisite to all the other abilities that they were giving attention to or feeling was those abilities were most desirable. And Paul goes on to use a before and after type comparison to try to explain that even more. And he's trying to show the Corinthians that right now our understanding is limited. Our awareness of what God is doing with us is limited versus what it will be when we arrive at what God is trying to do with us and make of us. Once we reach that point and have fulfilled God's plan for us, it's going to seem clearer because we would have already arrived, particularly when we look back and see what God was doing. And we'll see, oh, that wasn't clear at the time, but it's fully clear now. I see what God was doing. I see the environment that I am now in. And so our understanding now is partial, it's limited. But in the future, when we do arrive at what God is making of us, we're going to have far more detail. And so Paul uses an example of having a mirror that is giving an image that isn't very clear. And you have to understand, Paul didn't have access to the mirrors that we are accustomed to, that glossy piece of glass that gives you a reflection. Those mirrors wouldn't come into production until the 13th century. The mirrors that Paul was familiar with, that he had in his day, were a very shiny piece of metal. And you would imagine that image wasn't very clear. It was rather choppy. And so that's what Paul was referring to. He was comparing that image to the understanding of what is present now and how God is working with us. What is present now and how God is using these various tools that we are aware of and working with us, as I mentioned before, whether it be miracles or the prophecy that we have been exposed to, one day when all those things are fulfilled, there won't be a need for that anymore. And therefore, Paul is trying to explain to the Corinthians, your emphasis is on the wrong thing. You're not prioritizing in the right way, and instead should be more focused on that demonstration of love. Again, not a feeling, it is an action. It preceded by a state of mind, and that then incurs behavior, but behind it. That is what Paul is saying should be of most importance as we develop the character of God, as God is working with us. And this is the before and after aspect that Paul was referring to, as God is working with us presently, and we're looking forward to what we will become. I'm George Roper with Authentic Faith.